What's up, man? How's your week been so far?
Been it's been there, you know. Definitely had better weeks, but we are where we're at.
You
And
want to expand on that?
yeah, I mean, a couple of days ago, I went to the gym and I hit leg day,
That's a first.
and it's not very nice, but
I'm just joking.
I hit legs, and I'm very tired. It's a very long process at this point. I did leg press, leg extension, the whole thing. I walk out, and I'm very tired from the exertion that I was doing in the gym. And I realized that I forgot where I parked my car. But as a man, when women are lost in a parking lot, it's like, oh, like, she's just wandering around. When a man is lost, it feels so emasculating as a man to be in a
Why? Because
gym
you
parking
walk
lot.
around looking like an idiot?
Yeah, to walk around a parking lot and just look like a complete lost fool, right? So me, knowing that this is going on, I immediately tense up. I put on my mean face and I start walking around, you know, aimlessly, not knowing what I'm doing, but walking around nonetheless to find my car because the way that my gym is so busy all the time. So you really, it's like the parking lot's always full. So I'm aimlessly walking around this parking lot, right? Feeling very just like my manhood is being questioned right now. And eventually, after like 5 minutes, I find my car. I get in, and that whole process has really stuck with me. So when I went to the gym today, I made sure I parked in the front, right? So I couldn't lose my car. So as soon as I got out after hitting chest and back, I just got in my car.
So what about it is so emasculating, though? Are you basing that off of societal norms of
About
masculinity?
gender roles,
Yeah.
about things like that. Yeah, it's actually very like it's a convenient story because now we're gonna transition into what we think gender is.
I mean, before we get into our definition of what gender is, you want to read what Google's definition is?
Yeah, so Google defines gender as the male sex or the female sex, especially when considered with reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones, or one of a range of other identities that do not correspond to established ideas of male and female.
I agree with that.
Well, I would hope. It's on Google.
That doesn't mean it's correct. I mean, I feel like gender is a very touchy subject and it's also pretty subjective
Yeah, I think
definition that
especially
people have.
yeah, I think especially now, like we live in such a reactionary society that, culture war and everyone has like this hill that they're going to die on and their belief in what gender is one of those things where, it's very strong and it's very people are very defensive of their interpretation of gender. And I think, we live in an ever-changing society, especially now. So, gender norms, gender roles, our idea of what gender is changing. And I think, we see that play out in society now. I would also agree with the, Google definition. I think it's important that they differentiated sex from gender because that's something
Yeah.
that's often not like acknowledged.
Gender, like I said, is pretty subjective. People have their different definitions of it. So you can argue about what gender is. Everybody might have their own interpretation of that. But sex is
Yeah.
biological and it can't be argued. You're either with XY chromosomes or you were born with XX chromosomes. So
Yeah,
that
I
is
would
definitive based off of science. But gender, I do agree, has it depends.
yeah,
It's cultural, societal.
yeah, it's more societally constructed and it's not as binary as sex is that ties you to one, sex or the other. So I think, and then I think also, like we were talking earlier about the societal and cultural implications of gender, I think from that kind of comes gender roles and what we would, assign to each gender, like gender roles for men, gender roles for women. and what we think kind of comes out of that.
So gender roles over time have changed. So we can look at traditional gender roles or current gender roles, right? I mean, if you look at the traditional basis, which a lot of our culture still follows traditional gender roles,
Mm-hmm.
a man is a provider, a man works, a man doesn't, show emotions as much, like feminine type emotions. What do women do? Stay at home, cook, clean, take care of the kids, don't work, right? But it's a lot different now because, well, society has changed. I mean, cultures are different. Women work, men can take care of kids. It depends on your culture, it depends on society, and it also it depends on what you believe in too. Do you believe in traditional gender roles or do you believe in modern day gender roles? Or, a combination of both.
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting, like our current interpretation of gender roles and what we consider to be masculine and feminine, and there's this orientation of like men as the provider, the strong, silent type, if you will. They provide for their families. They don't really express themselves all too emotionally. Then you have the women who are more like kind of oriented traditionally as caretakers. They take care of the family, of the husband. They do more domestic work. And obviously, as society has changed, those roles have changed. That may be our traditional, I guess, view of what they are, but that doesn't mean necessarily that that's what we have nowadays. And so, with the changing of gender roles, you also change like what's masculine and what's feminine. Like so, and we also see that too, like over time as cultures change, as things change. There's things that were masculine back in the day that aren't really masculine now. So at
What
like
do you
live
mean by that?
like
Like, give an example.
a great example, bro. When I was a kid, men used to do like when it came to traveling, men used to do everything. Like I'm talking book the ticket, make sure everyone, oh well, women usually like pack the bags, like that was kind of their thing. But bro, you book the ticket, you drive to the airport, you figure out every situation. You drive to the airport, you get there, you talk to the man talks to like the flight agent, whoever at the front. They're the ones who's checking in the bags and everything. They're leading this whole trip. I've seen nowadays women do like all that stuff. Like they well, they don't drive there, but they, once you get to the airport, the women like does everything, and the man is just takes care of the kids. If there's kids there, they're the one who's like at the gate. They're checking everybody in. They also have to make sure that everyone has their stuff, and then like they have to pack the bags for the kids, pack the bag like for them and their husband. Like that used to not be a thing when I was a kid, and I see it so much more now, where the woman is like not only the packer, but also like the person talking to the agent, the person getting everyone through TSA, the person making sure like the trip is going smoothly. That used to be such a like a man thing, and I see it so much more now, where like the woman's just like, yeah, just does all of it. I think that's so crazy.
You know what I have to add to that? It kind of in relation to our last episode about relationships and, 50-50, right? That is crazy because how, as a man, are you going to have your woman look after the children, pack everything, and still have to do all of that at the airport? Like, what
No,
are
but
you even contributing as a
that's
man?
the thing is like what men will say, or what I've seen men say is like, oh well, I paid for everything. I paid for everything. So I think it's also about something to where like what we value as work, and how we value money, right? And is money everything? Is money like the whole, like you can just you can sit back and do everything because you provide this element of money, and then just because you provide money, like you lose. I feel like in so many ways, like when, because, and I think this isn't really acknowledged like with men, because men are just like, oh yeah, like I make so much money, or you just look at it
Right.
as, and men get oriented as just wallets, right? You're not, you lose, like you have feelings, you have emotions, you have things you want to do, you have things you want to pursue, you have things that you would want to express, and that kind of gets lost in this whole like, oh well, I paid for everything, so that's just my, like that's your only role is just doing one thing, and then there's so much more to life than just making money and just
Yeah,
providing it.
there is. There's
There's
so much more to just providing. You're sitting there idly, and it's just it doesn't really make sense that if all you are bringing to the table, all you are doing is providing, which is great. I mean, as you should as a man, but anyway, if all you're doing is providing, but you're not really being present with everything else, it's kind of I feel like there's an imbalance
yeah,
in your relationship.
and
Whatever
there's
relationship it is,
yeah,
whatever
and there's a lot
dynamic
of
you have.
other examples too, like across cultures, like coming here when people like down here in South Florida, Hispanic people greet each other by like kissing each other on the cheek.
Hmm.
In our culture, there's no like that's not really a thing, you know?
Bro, in our
That's
culture, it'd be married couples that won't even hold hands in
yeah,
front of their family. So
let alone doing it to other people. So
no,
I
yeah.
think that's another thing. Like, and you look across. There's no one definition. The point of what I'm trying to say here is there's no one definition of like what masculinity is or what femininity is, or one idea of what a male's role is or one idea of what a woman's role is. And there's more than just men and women. There's not it's not just one binary or the other. It's not one or the other. It's a spectrum. Gender is a spectrum. So I think, you can, and we live in a world that's ever changing. So we should live in a society, where you take the good and you take the good, you leave the bad, right? So what do you think is like what would you associate with masculinity?
Just from what I've grown up seeing, I associate masculinity with, being a provider, being powerful, not powerful in the sense of like a ruler or like a tyrant, but powerful in the sense of, no, but it's true. Like when I think of like someone that's like masculine, I guess not necessarily powerful, but like confident in the sense of like they know what they're doing. A lot of powerful people are confident and they know what they're doing is kind of what I was trying to get at.
Can you expand on being powerful?
I already did. I'm saying like not being powerful as in asserting power over another person, but it's kind of just being powerful in the sense that you're confident in yourself and you're able to make decisions that's going to like further your family or further your offspring, whatever it is. In a biological sense is what I'm talking about when I mean
Okay,
powerful. Yeah.
understood. So what do you think about femininity?
In terms of femininity, I believe it's more of nurturing, versus being like a go-getter type of a situation. Nurturing emotions, caring, like catering to. That's kind of what when I think of femininity, it's kind of what I think of.
Why do you think like that? Like, what do you think goes into that idea of masculinity and femininity?
Culture and society. That's just how I grew up. Like you're Punjabi too. You know how it is. Women don't do this. There's a saying, "Kudiyan nahi kardiyan, mundeya nahi karde." So it's a big thing that's just been ingrained since you've grown up. There'd be so many things where I would want to do it, and my mom would be like, "You can't do that because you're a girl," but my brother could do it, and it just didn't make any sense to me. It's just how I grew up. It's just gender roles within our culture of, well, girls can't do this but guys can do that. It's just a double
Yeah,
standard and it's hypocrisy. Like my brother could stay out as late as he wanted, but I couldn't stay past 7, you know?
culture definitely impacts like what we think of like
You
the
know,
different things boys can
even
do, the different things girls can do.
yeah,
You know?
sometimes I'd even want to just go out with my like male cousins, like in India, not in America, but like in India. If I wanted to go out with my male cousins, my mom would be like, "No, kuriyan nahi ferdiyan," which the
Yeah,
translation to that is like, "Women don't wander around." And it's like it's my cousins.
yeah.
It's just a strange mentality, but
It
it's been
it's
ingrained since I was little. So
it's very interesting because now we live in a time and we live in America that where like it's more so much like we see that it's not just men who can act a certain way or behave a certain way. It's not just women who can act a certain way or behave a certain way. Like you see on social media all the time. You see so
right,
many women calling dudes zesty for like like things that they would do all the time. Like,
Yeah, that's so true.
for
I totally forgot about that.
when he like double texts or no, well that's not. I guess that's not one.
Or like
Um,
there's that whole debate on Twitter too of how men
build a
want to
house.
be. Yeah, that too. Men used to go to war and build homes, and now they're double texting, or now they want flowers or something like that. Like
Now they're
they'd be
on
talking about
podcasts.
that other thing they talk about on Twitter, where it'll be like nowadays men want to be treated like women, and it's like, where does that stem from? If you think about it, what do you
Men want to
mean
be
men want to
cared
be treated?
for. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
we have feelings, we have emotions. It's not just
God forbid.
God forbid, right? God forbid I get flowers or something.
Amen.
You know,
I
you
don't know about
want
that one.
flowers. God forbid you desire things other than like people think, oh, just gym, eating meat, and like the traditional sense of masculine. Like what is
Yeah.
like one's interpretation of masculinity can change, especially now. Like we live in such a big, I guess, like shifting of time and culture, especially where there's no real central idea of what masculinity is or what femininity is. And you see all these people. I think it's so crazy seeing all the people who are like, I want a trad wife, which is like an online thing where that they want like a traditional wife. And then you see
I've never
women
heard
like,
that.
maybe I'm just online, but it's
Might
like
be
tradition,
on Reddit too
like people
much.
want a traditional wife. They don't want like whatever, like people. So many people nowadays will be calling women they're modern if they like work or if they leave the house or if they do like, engage in society, right? They're a modern woman, and or if they pursue their
Really?
career, if you don't see that, like if women like pursue their career instead of focusing on like getting married and having kids, you
Yeah,
don't
within our culture, I see that, but
you don't
on
see that
if
in
we're
general.
no, like if we're talking about like Twitter or social media, I see a lot more of a push towards equality for men and women of, you know, women can take on the role that men have taken on before, and that's where that whole 50-50 dynamic comes in too. But that's kind of what I've seen more versus men saying they want a traditional woman. But you know what's also crazy about that too is a lot of men will say, uh like on social media, what I've seen is a lot of men will talk about how they want um a woman that has more to offer than the typical thing that women say that they have to offer.
Yeah.
But then they'll be like, oh, but she also has to like cook, but she also has to like look after
Yeah,
the kids and this and
the
that.
second shift, they have to
Yeah,
not only
and
do
that's
women have to
ridiculous.
work, they also have to come home and take care of everyone in the house, which makes
Yeah,
no sense.
including a grown ass man. Yeah,
Literally.
that makes absolutely no sense. So what is your take on what masculinity and femininity is then?
I mean, I would say like the masculine elements that I guess we grew up with like in our culture, obviously a lot of that is the same. But I think like a lot of things that I would associate with masculinity is and they're like these principles or these ideas are inevitably gender neutral, but I guess the things I would associate with men is, like you said, strong, resilient.
Yep.
um I would say more like honorable, like yeah, if you're like the things that
Yeah,
traditionally get
that's a good
associated
one.
with masculinity is like honor, virtue, adventure. Like you're
And
you're
also,
you're a honest person, things
just to
like
add
that.
to that as well, when I think of men, like masculinity, the word stoic kind of comes in mind too,
Mm-hmm.
just to go off of what you were saying as well. But yeah, everything you listed off, I agree with too. That's kind of how my take on masculinity has been as well, based off of like our culture and
Yeah,
what we grew up around.
and then with women or with femininity, it's more and these are so again arbitrary, and it's not necessary, like it can vary from person to person, but nurturing, I would say that's a big one. Caring, loving, emotional, attitude, um,
Gentle.
gentle, compassionate, like more emotion, the more emotions are present, more caring is involved with
Yeah.
with I guess people's sense of femininity and their how they kind of orient women and how they should behave and what they should do.
Yeah, it's
Um,
that depiction of being logical and then being emotional, and how those are associated with men being more logical and women being more emotional. Because
yeah,
all the characteristics that women are described with have more to do with emotion. All the characteristics that men are described with are kind of more logic based,
yeah,
or
and
status based.
so much of it, it's just it's gender neutral, and I would say like you want, and that's why there's so many. Like whenever I think nowadays whenever women or whenever people see a dude who has like emotions or and again it varies because there's men that if they are more emotional and they're not as societally well liked, then they're just a baby, or there's just that, or they're this or they're that, or they're sensitive. And it's something we see like definitely within our culture, or we see in pop culture in general, is when certain men act and are emotional and behave a certain way expressing their emotions, then they're doing too much, or they're shunned and not really, I guess, appreciated or respected for their emotions, versus when other men are emotional and they express their things, they're just being a man. And I think that also depends on the emotion that's being expressed, right? So another thing that we didn't talk about that traditionally gets associated with men is anger, right?
Yes, very true.
This sense of whenever anger is expressed or whenever something violent is expressed, it's more masculine. And when something is more gentle and caring, like you said earlier, it's more feminine, right? When men are violent, when men express oh, they're just, what could you expect? He's angry, he's upset. And so when you act out in rage, people are more understanding of it. And then when you cry, or when you talk about having feelings of anxiety or feelings of stress and not feeling well, and you express emotions outside of anger, you're not necessarily, people look at you as soft or sensitive or not less of a man just because you express something outside of like punching a wall. So
Yeah.
that's another thing that I think our culture, and we could definitely work on, is understanding there's a whole range of emotions. And you know as a kid you really do get shunned for, I mean, I can speak in our culture, but I think it's something that is definitely across cultures. If you like are sad, or if you cry as a man, you are so like you get like made fun of, bullied. This that like the thing that
Yep.
you said about stoicism is so I guess important in this part, because you really get, you have to be like to an extent, you're not allowed to really express other emotions. I mean, there are penalties coming with like expressing violence and anger, but like you're not really allowed to express yourself in a way that's open and caring, and where people will understand you if you're a man, right? If you're a woman, it's almost like the polar opposite, where everything is emotional, or everything is like you're doing too much. And it's something where like you could just want something like basic, or something that like you don't want to be viewed or perceived a certain way, and that's seen as an emotional outburst, or defending yourself is emotional. So I think
You know what else? You know what else, just to go along with that too, is men are kind of associated with dominance, whereas women are associated with being more submissive. And that plays in with the whole power dynamic and being, angry or being
mm-hmm,
violent, because that's a way that people will assert their dominance. And
yeah.
with women, it's them being submissive is them being frail and accepting of whatever comes their way. So that's also another cultural characteristic of femininity and
Yeah, and I
masculinity
think
too.
there's so many things, especially like you have so many terms, right? For example, like if someone's being a bitch, so many things get all like the so many negative connotations come with like bitch, pussy, things like that, things that are associated with women in terms of like, oh, like you're acting out emotionally. And there's not a lot of, I mean, what's like the male equivalent?
You're
What's
being a
the
dick, but people don't really take much offense to that.
yeah, it's not like a big no
It's
no,
not like, calling someone like cunt, you know, I don't like saying that word,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean, like that's more offensive. You know what else I think is kind of interesting too? Like forget about emotions, but people associating color with gender is very interesting to me too. Like, you know, where did this push of blue is associated with men and pink is associated with
Oh
women
yeah.
come from? Like, you
Oh
know what I'm
yeah.
talking about? Like, where
Like
did that
Barbie
even develop
dolls, and
from?
I don't even know
Yeah.
what's blue.
Like, where did that come from? I don't
Trucks.
like colors. I don't understand. Like toys, I kind of understand the concept of like where it's trucks or guns and all of that being geared towards men. Because as you said, it's more of working, violence, anger, things that are in that category. Toys and entertainment that's geared towards that is
Yeah,
associated
for
with
sure.
men, and then you know all the like dainty feminine things are obviously more associated with girls or women.
Yeah,
But
it's
where
such
the hell
and
did the concept of color come from? That pink, purple, you
yeah.
know, yellow, all that stuff is feminine, and then blue, green, black, all of that is
And
masculine.
it's such
Like,
a
who came up with
false
that?
like association or connotation because you see so many kids, especially now, like there's girls who play video games. There's girls and which were traditionally like a masculine thing or only for men, but they get treated very poorly in the lobbies in the online lobbies
I
that
don't know,
I've been
man.
in.
Them e-girls be making a lot of money. The
No, I'm
gamer
saying like
girls?
if you, bro, but if you, let me tell you something. If you have a female or feminine voice and you say something in a Call of Duty online lobby, the entire lobby is going to harass you for the duration of the match. You are going to be harassed just because you're a girl. They're gonna like you're gonna get sandwich jokes. You're gonna get kitchen. You're gonna get some stuff that's like insane, like actually insane. And that's something, you know, that's you see misogyny and the patriarchy play out.
I've heard them Call of Duty lobbies be terrible though. Not even in terms of like misogyny, but racism
Racism,
too, bro.
vile, anything you
Yeah.
could. It's not a good time in there. It's very reaction. I mean, Call of Duty
So
itself is
why
a
do you
sign.
guys so why do you guys play it?
That's the other thing is like well, this idea of going to war. It's like a man thing. I mean, I that I kind of I understand, but this whole like connotation of things is or association with one gender or the other is so like again like gender is a spectrum, but on top of that, you see women doing things that are quote unquote masculine, and you see women like alpha women. You see that nowadays,
Bro, working
or
out too. Actually,
yeah,
I do want to discuss that working out, especially as a Punjabi woman. Not a lot of Punjabi women are really into weightlifting because women in general, because women have this idea that they're gonna look too masculine or too manly if they work out, if they lift
if they
weights.
work
That's
out
like
like
a
upper body, right? Upper
yeah,
body.
yeah, yeah. Upper body too, but just in general, they think lifting weights is gonna make them like bulky and masculine. And I don't know where this idea comes from. Probably just, you know, misinformation and not enough knowledge about how, you know, your body actually works
Yeah.
and how physique is obtained. But um it's just interesting to see that too because when I would be like weightlifting, my mom, like my parents, not my dad, but my mom would just kind of be like why are you into that? That's kind of more like a manly thing to
Yeah,
do, you
because the
know?
whole you get like your whole I guess the whole association with women and femininity is like submissiveness. So
Yeah,
what's
I'm
the
being
point of you
small.
what's the point of you going to the gym and working out? Like you're not what are you doing that for? You know, like
Yeah,
taking care of
literally.
yourself and your health?
Getting stronger.
Who does that, man? Getting ear piercings in some cultures it's like a man thing. In our
Yeah.
culture,
Nose piercing as a man in our culture, bro. Ooh.
crazy. Crazy.
Bro,
Some
the amount of shit you're
women
gonna
can't
get
even
from
get yeah, women can't even get that.
me, bro. When I got my nose pierced, my mom gave me so much shit for it.
Those piercings are definitely a big no-no in our culture. Even in like Western culture, like hair in general, like body hair on women is
Yep.
so much more like you get like double looks or like people are like
And that's, you know, growing up Indian, bro, Indian women, we be hairy. So growing up, no, man, listen. Growing up like as an Indian kid, that was, you know, the
you had the
hair shit
mustache.
is Bro.
Yeah, the
I
unibrow.
I didn't have a unibrow, no, but
You were
that shit
saved.
was tough. That shit was tough. And now look at these women trying to get thick eyebrows
Yeah. Bro,
when we used to be ridiculed for it.
back in the day, like 40, 50 years ago, I remember because I would get like hair on my chest and shit, and I'd be like, just kind of inconvenient, and then I would get like bullied for it. It's funny you brought up the eyebrow point because even when I was a kid and like having hairy arms or like hairy chest, you would always get like made fun of and stuff. But 50 years ago, your parents would be like, or like my parents were like, that means you're a man. It's like a masculine thing to
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
hairy
yeah.
chest. And nowadays, like I guess gender also impacts like beauty standards and what we
It
think
does.
of, like a woman's beauty standard, what we think of a male's beauty standard, what the ideal man or woman is, and what that looks like.
It
I
does
think,
impact beauty standards because a lot of people who aren't Sikh don't know this, but like one of the things in Sikhi is you have to keep your hair. And so as women who follow Sikhi religiously are, actual true Amritaris, are true Gursik that follow it, they keep their gis and they get ridiculed for it because of
yeah.
European beauty standards. So it definitely has a role in that
But
too.
even within our community, like there's so many Gursikh
Yeah, even in
women
our
who,
community.
like you see, like sings, Avratari sings, they go from
Yeah,
Munya. They
yeah, yeah,
don't,
yeah. I've seen that too. I've
and
seen that
Gursikh
that
women
debate.
talk about that all the time.
But it's true though, because like there are so many Gorsik men that ridicule Gorsik women. And it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, it's not just a European beauty standard or it's not just Western culture that does it. It's people within our own culture that do it as well.
Which is pretty sad.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's the
Women.
thing. There's a different. You have different levels of expectations for women and for men, and you see that all the time. You see that everywhere. And the thing is, and I think this is an important conversation to have, where so many people are like, yeah, well, I get it. We're trying to strive towards equality. We want to live in a more equitable world. But one person will say, hey, I think women, like I want my wife to raise my kids, and that's why I want to get a high paying job so that we're able to have just one income. And I would say to that, shouldn't you want both people to help raise the kid or help raise the kids? Shouldn't you
Yeah, like
both?
as a father, don't you want to be home with your children?
Exactly. And I
You know?
think that situation is more of like a labor question and more of like organizing our collective labor power in the United States to get better working conditions. I mean, no, everyone I
Exactly. Yeah.
believe should want to work less, and then we're going to talk about this in a future episode, but should want to work less and spend more time with their family, spend more time with their loved ones. The amount of stress and financial burden that comes on a lot of men is what makes them aggressive, is what makes them, and the inability for them to express emotions is what brings out these negative emotions and these negative feelings. And when there's no way to express how like depressed you are or how anxious you feel, how stressed you feel, that manifests itself in different behaviors and in different ways. I think ultimately we should want to live in a more equitable world where, men aren't just oriented as a wallet and where women just aren't oriented as a caretaker. Because as humans, there's so much more to us than just providing money monetarily and providing emotionally or domestically. We're all complex beings with complex thoughts and ideas, and we should all be able to freely express those ideas and thoughts as they come to us.
I agree with you. And also, just to add to that, there's people on TikTok that their entire niche is this what masculinity and femininity is, and how, if as a woman, if you want a man, if you're abiding by traditional gender roles, if you want a man who's a provider, you have to be in your feminine energy, right? It's this whole soft girl era, like thing that's been going on around social media. It's like TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, soft girl aesthetic, whatever. Like basically just saying if you want a man to provide for you, you have to stop being masculine. You have to stop giving and you have to start receiving. And so it's kind of interesting because it just plays on traditional gender roles.
I think so much of like that is just repackaged Reaganite social conservatism, and I think you see that so much everywhere. Where and I think it's really funny that you bring that up because I saw something like I saw a tweet where it was like women's motivation on TikTok and things like that is like, oh, whatever happened. Like, today's a new day. You're gonna get better. Life is gonna get better. You know, you're a strong woman. Everything, bro. The male motivation TikTok is like Andrew Tate saying the most deranged thing you'll ever hear.
Literally.
And be an alpha male, be a complete asshole to everyone else. 48 laws of power. That's like the male motivation. Is to just be a menace to society. It's literally dehumanizing people in real time. That's all that is. That's all. You're a TikTok trend. That's all you are. Good job, buddy. The amount of men that talk about being an alpha male while hiding behind an anonymous account on social media, you don't see the contradiction, and also you're learning how to be an alpha male from another man. You don't see the contradiction again? What?
Yes. That seems kind of.
And it's such a it's so like sensitive. Some people's perception of masculinity is so sensitive, where anything kind of breaks it, or you do anything that's not aligned with that idea, and you're no longer a man. And it's like, if it's such a strong idea, if it's such a strong belief set, then how is it so sensitive? How is it so delicate?
It's not even their belief set. It's a belief set of some dude with a podcast that they be listening to.
Misogyny, man. That's all it
And then
is.
Andrew Tate.
Patriarchy. So Navneet and I have talked a lot about our opinions and our ideas, and I guess our perception of gender roles and their importance in our culture and society. So now we're going to take some questions and submissions that you guys actually had for us. Navneet, would you like to read the first one?
Yeah, of course. So this is kind of a long one, so just bear with me.
She's not good at reading. That's what that means.
I'm great at reading. Anyway, so this individual said, while we have made efforts to deconstruct some gender roles, on the whole, we still have issues. Fuck, bro, you saying I can't read is making me laugh because I'm stuttering. Okay. So this person said, while we have made efforts to deconstruct, bro, I can't fucking read this shit.
Oh my God, you
I
can't
don't know
read.
why. I can't start laughing.
So because Navneet can't read, I'm gonna read. While we have made efforts to deconstruct some gender roles, on the whole, we still have issues letting go of traditional gender roles. For example, you see it on Twitter how women will say if a man acts a certain way or if he cheats too much, he's just gay. But that's a generalization, and you're contributing to the same traditional gender roles when you say that. I do think culture plays a big role because it allows these gender roles to be continually replicated, like in the Punjabi community, how even older millennials that have kids can replicate those same behaviors we saw in our parents. Like, a lot of Punjabi people, whether they are younger or older, still have issues with being homophobic or transphobic, so they don't let their kids express themselves freely. They still see the binary in most cases. Also, since we are what will people say culture, it reinforces the binary even more, because the few Punjabi people who are accepting are also shamed for even supporting gay or trans people. I think masculinity and femininity is almost reminiscent of a culture to me. Like, you have many unsaid things that make you feel like a woman, but in truth they are arbitrary. I feel like when we start seeing each other as not that different, and the masculinity and femininity we perceive to be real as just a product of socialization, we can better break down the gender binary. The idea that, to be a woman is to follow all these unsaid rituals is not necessarily true. It's because we prescribe value to these rituals and associate them with femininity is the reason why we see it as such. If we were more open with it even ourselves, it would allow us a better space to grow. I think like gender issues and like homophobia, I think acceptance of gender issues is not really popular among a lot of cultures. And you definitely see that in the Punjabi community. Versus like with racism, there's more understanding, and there's more there's more of like a broad understanding of what racism is and the effects it has on people, versus the effects of transphobia and the effects of homophobia on a group of people. And I think a lot of that is because so many more people in our culture, especially in America and in the West, we experience racism every day. And not to say that our community does not partake in the racism of other people, because we definitely do that. But it's more of an understanding, like people are more understanding of what racism is and how detrimental it is, that thought process, versus like being transphobic or being homophobic. They don't really connotate that as harmful or as mean as societally destructive as racism is.
Also, the thing about being homophobic and transphobic in our culture is because, as we mentioned earlier, our culture is so rooted in traditional gender roles that anything outside of that norm is just taboo. People cannot conceptualize it, they can't wrap their head around it. So, anything that's different from what they grew up with, which, you know, the majority of them grew up with traditional gender roles where a man is a man and a woman is a woman based off of like what you're born with. Like you are the sex that you were born, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's so common for people in our culture to be transphobic or homophobic because they still abide by these traditional gender roles, which is exactly what this person's saying. And until you're able to, you know, differentiate that and realize that there's more than just man or woman, we're not really gonna progress.
I think they made a great point and kind of synthesized what we're saying when they said a lot of our perception and idea of gender and gender roles and masculinity and femininity is really a product of socialization.
Yeah.
And what we perceive as masculine, what we perceive as feminine, what we consider is a gender role for men, what we consider as a gender role for women, all really boils down to this: how we socialize with each other, how the jobs are, how our society works, and how our culture works. In addition to that, though, I think they make a really funny point when they said in the beginning. For example, you see it on Twitter how women will say if a man acts a certain way or if he cheats too much, he's just gay.
That's what we were
The
saying
way
earlier, where
women
people will say men are zesty if they
yeah,
do something, you know? That's
the way
not a
women are
traditional.
just so ready, like to take no accountability and just be like, oh, the guy's gay. Like
That's such
women
a
will do
common
some
thing.
women will do some batshit crazy thing, like something that you have to break up with him for. And they're like, oh, he was just gay. Like
There's that thing that people do on so on Twitter, a lot of times you'll see women saying stuff like, it's okay, ladies, if a man did this, this, and this to you, because at the end of the day, men don't like women, they just like men. Have you ever seen that discourse on Twitter?
yeah, or like when men like hang out with their friends too much, they like are gay for their friends.
Yeah. But in terms of, you know, the LGBT community and transgender people, I actually want to address this other comment that we got, which ties into that. This individual said, you also talk about how in Indian culture, transgender people coming to your house to celebrate with you is seen as a sign of good luck. But if someone is born into your family who wants to transition, you're disowned or not accepted. Also, about how parents will hide their children's sexuality in order to be accepted in the Indian community, even if that means putting their child at risk for depression or suicide. Again, that ties into what the other person said too about how we're a what will people think culture. So, you know, people in our culture will prioritize their social status and their reputation over mental health of their own child. That's so true. So, in terms of what they were saying about transgender people coming to your house to celebrate, that does happen in India and it is seen as good luck. You know, they come, they perform, and usually they'll ask for money sometimes, but typically they give their blessings and people consider that to be good luck. This is kind of interesting how that's considered good luck, but if you have someone in your family that's transgender or gay, that's frowned upon. You know, it just doesn't make sense. Also, so on TikTok, I've seen this woman. I don't remember her name. I think her name is Mackenzie God, and she is a transgender Punjabi woman. And seeing her videos is just so. If you want to see how much our community does not like LGBTQ, like transgender or gay people, like go to her TikTok page. Look at all the hate she gets for existing.
And to your point, this stuff kills people. I think that's what the bottom line, like understanding of this needs to be, is transphobia, homophobia, anti-LGBTQ rhetoric that's become very popularized. It kills people. And a lot of politicians and people in power, what they used to do was blame people of color, and as people of different races, we're very able to, and I think this ties back to the previous question, our understanding of racism and its effects and what it does to people, we're more able to understand that. But then when it comes to things that are like gender issues or gender and sexuality problems, we become so ignorant to that. And it's the same playbook that politicians used 60 years ago to blame black people integrating into schools for budget cuts, for, you know, the failure of American society. We see that a lot nowadays where, you know, we're just trying to help these people integrate into society. How did these people like negatively affect your life? And
They
I
don't. It's
I
just trying to
think
find a scapegoat.
exactly. And that stuff kills people, man. And again, I'm cis, heterosexual, male. Navneet is also cis, heterosexual, one female. We come from very privileged positions. But again, I think and there are people who were able to have these conversations freely and we're not attacked for our gender identity or anything like that. But people are, and and I can't emphasize enough, these things, this rhetoric gets people killed. It dehumanizes people. It makes them seem other. It makes them seem less than. And a lot of that, for people again who are just trying to exist, they're trying to live. They're not harming you. Their existence, if their existence bothers you, then you need to reevaluate what you think, what you value.
No, I totally agree with that. That was actually very well put. All right, so the next input that we got was, y'all should talk about how Punjabi parents will teach their young daughters to constantly think about their in-laws in every aspect of their life before doing anything, but when it comes to boys, they aren't taught the same as women. This is kind of what I was telling you about earlier, where I grew up and my mom would be like, women don't do, like, "Kuriyan nahi kardiyan," women don't do this, but it's okay if men do it. And this is so true. Bro, as a Punjabi woman, the peak of your life for most people is to be married. You get married, and then what's next? Have kids. That is literally the peak of your life. Learn how to cook. Why? For your future husband. Learn how to do household chores, household work. Why? For your future husband, for your future kids. Why aren't men taught this? Why isn't a man taught how to cook? Why isn't a man taught how to do laundry? Why isn't a man taught how to clean? Why isn't that expected of him? Because there's going to be a Punjabi woman down the road who's been taught her entire life that she has to cater to someone's grown ass son and take care of him because he's been babied by his mom his entire life. That's the dynamic of our culture. That's the way it's been for so long, and that's the way it continues to be, you know, until we break these gender norms that we have within our culture.
Yeah, I agree with everything you were saying in that. I would just add that, you know, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about how women are taught to be subservient to men, and they're supposed to be, you know, like whatever the man wants, the woman should be able to provide type thing. Because again, I think it's because like you're
Because he's
supposed,
the provider,
yeah,
he's
because
giving
he's
you
supposed to,
money,
yeah,
right?
exactly. But with that being said, I think an interesting thing that comes out of this question is how that the topic of like in-laws staying with you, right? So when it's the man's parents staying with you and like it's understood, it's completely
Right.
like oh
It's
yeah,
the
like
norm.
yeah, it's normal, like they should be able to stay with you or whatever.
Matter of fact, you're expected to stay with your in-laws as a woman. Like, that's expected of you. It's,
Yeah,
I mean, now obviously, you know, culture has changed, times have changed, so people are more open to, in-laws are more open to, you know, their son and daughter-in-law not living with them. But the traditional expected norm is that you are going to stay in a joint family with your in-laws as a woman.
but the
But if I were to
daughters,
have, yeah, but if
yeah,
I were to have my parents stay with me and my husband, like, that would be frowned upon.
it ain't the same thing, right?
It's not.
Then it becomes, then it's not just parents staying with you, then it's oh like when the parents are dependent on the man, it's fine. But when parents are dependent on the daughter, it's not.
It's just a lot of hypocrisy within our culture. A lot of these
Yeah.
gender norms, these rules that we have, they make absolutely no sense.
Yeah, they're very contradictory.
Yeah, they are.
Just to add to that too is, you know, you always like if you see in the movies, you see in the stories, like the men, when men visit the woman's family, or the way that men integrate into the woman's family isn't as focused on or isn't as like cared about versus how the woman integrates into the man's family, right? So like
Right.
if the man is a terrible person to his in-laws, is not good, doesn't matter, right? Throw that out the window, like oh, like it's fine, we accept
That's
that.
just how he is.
But if the woman doesn't be subservient to all of her in-laws, then she's like a terrible woman, and and the mother-in-law is talking so bad about her and blah 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 blah. And it's just it's pathetic. It dehumanizes women.
Yeah, it does. You know what's crazy too is like I think this conversation is kind of interesting where people will say that women expect so much from a man, but men expect so much from a woman that if a like so say for example, there's women out there that they just want a man who provides, they get called gold diggers, right? Which is funny to me because it's like all they're really asking for is for you to provide. But what do you want from a woman? You want her to cook, you want her to clean, you want her to take care of your kids. Most likely you don't want her to work. So it's just like men have these list of requirements too, but then if a woman has one requirement, it's just
Yeah.
you know,
Like, oh, she's asking for too much. Or
yeah,
like during
exactly.
like an arranged marriages is its own kind of topic, and we touched on it a little bit in the last episode. But it's always so funny when women are going to get married and they have any type of standards, and the entire family is just like, oh, you're asking for too much. You're like
Yeah.
you'll get to like, oh, like I hope he's like, um has a good job or is able to do this or that, and then the entire family is just like, you should settle a little bit, like you should settle down. Versus a
That's
man,
crazy.
when a man is like, if again, like we talked about in the last episode, if they don't reach every single like standard or pillar, it's like, oh yeah, well,
They're not
she wasn't
settling.
good enough for my son. That's what it is, or she wasn't good enough for my brother. But when it's not, you don't really see that in the opposite way.
You don't.
Take
This
us
whole
home.
mentality though, honestly, it just needs to change. But it's very hard when so many people just have this like deep-rooted connection to gender norms and gender roles because that's how they grew up. So, if you've grown up a certain way for 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years, it's very hard for you to not think that way and not pass that on. But I mean, until we have these conversations, it's not going to change. Because, like you said, at the end of the day, there are people that, in terms of LGBTQ community, there are people that are being killed based off of literally traditional gender roles because they don't fit into traditional gender roles. So,
Because of their identity, just
yeah,
for who
exactly.
they are.
And, it just depends if you want to follow traditional gender roles, by all means, follow traditional gender roles. I just think you shouldn't force that upon other people.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I mean, we live in a world that's ever changing, and like you said earlier, there's so many things that, obviously is very heavily integrated in our culture, our perception of what men are, perception of what women are. And if we want to change that, it starts with us. And this is something that's a trend across cultures. And I would say that, it's something, if you want change, if you want societal change on a mass level, it's something where it starts with you, and it starts with, changing that attitude you have in yourself. And it's a lot of work, learning and unlearning a lot of things. But again, that's a slight inconvenience to you. It's life and death for these people that we're talking about, that we have the privilege to talk about, because we don't share the same circumstances that is life and death for them. So I think, to wrap this episode up, traditional gender roles, modern day gender roles, we see how kind of futile that, like put ornamenting things as one thing or the other, putting things into a binary of one thing or the other, that are societal, that are cultural, that can change as society and culture changes. I think it's flawed. And thank you all for watching.
Thank you all for your submissions. We really appreciate the engagement.
And thank you all for the great feedback that we get on these episodes.
Oh yeah.
We've only done 3, but thank you guys for all the compliments. It really means a lot. We put a lot of hard work into these episodes and writing and coming up with a plan for it, and especially Noveneet, who edits the videos. So
Thanks, man.
shout out to her, and thank you all for listening.